You can give your friend perfect advice about their problem, then turn around and make a complete mess of the exact same situation in your own life. This isn't a coincidence, and it isn't just you. It's called Solomon's Paradox, named after a king 3,000 years ago who was famous for his wisdom, and yet couldn't run his own life to save it. And the reason it happens reveals something genuinely strange about how your mind works. A friend calls you late at night. Something in their life has come apart, and they need help seeing it. You are good at this. You ask the question nobody else thought to ask. You notice the part they keep walking around without touching. You can see the whole shape of the thing, the way you see a city from a plane. You did not even work for it. The answer arrived while they were still describing the problem. 3 weeks later, the same thing happens to you, and the plane lands. You are down in the streets now, and every turn looks like every other turn. It is 2 a.m, and you are rehearsing a conversation that is never going to happen. Every clear thing you said on the phone that night is still sitting in your head. You just cannot reach it. 3,000 years ago, there was a king in Jerusalem whose entire reputation was built on this one skill. Solomon ruled for 40 years. People traveled for weeks to put their arguments in front of him. The case everyone still remembers involved 2 women and 1 living child. They lived in the same house and had given birthdays apart. One of the babies died in the night. By morning, there was 1 child left, and both women were calling him theirs. There were no witnesses. Nobody else lived in that house. It was one woman's word against another woman's word, and a king who had to pick. Solomon listened to both of them without saying anything. He asked them no questions. He let them both keep talking until they ran out of things to say. Then he called for a sword. The hall went quiet while a guard walked the blade up the steps and laid it in front of him. Nobody in that room knew whether he meant it. That was the point. His order was flat and administrative. Cut the child in 2, half to one, half to the other. The first woman agreed. If she could not have him, neither would the other one. The second woman broke apart in front of the whole court. She did not argue her case. She gave it away. Give him to her, she said. Just do not kill him. Solomon handed the living child to the second woman and closed the case. He never had to work out which one was lying. He built a situation where the truth had to show itself, and then he watched. That is what wisdom looks like from the outside. Someone who sees the mechanism while everyone else sees the mess. The story traveled the length of the country. Inside his own house, none of it worked. 700 wives, 300 more women in the household beyond that. Almost all of it was politics. A pharaoh's daughter out of Egypt, women from Moab and Ammon and Edom and Sidon. Every marriage bought him an alliance, and every alliance walked a foreign god through his front door. By the end of his life, he was building shrines for them on the hill east of Jerusalem. Ashtoreth, Milcom, Chemosh. A man who could read 2 strangers in a single afternoon could not read what 40 years were doing to his own household. He had spent 40 years looking at other people's houses from the outside, and he had never once stood outside his own. The building program did the rest. The temple, the palace, the walls, the terraces above the city. All of it ran on forced labor and heavy taxation. The weight of it landed on the northern tribes. Solomon noticed one young official who was unusually good at running that labor. His name was Jeroboam, so he promoted him and put him in charge of the entire northern workforce. He had personally handed control of the angriest region in his kingdom to the man who was going to take it from his family. A prophet called Ahijah found Jeroboam on the road outside the city. Ahijah pulled the new cloak off his own shoulders and tore it into 12 pieces. He did not explain it. He did not need to. He put 10 of them into Jeroboam's hands, 10 tribes. That was the whole message. When it got back to Solomon, he tried to have Jeroboam killed. Jeroboam ran to Egypt and waited there for the old king to die. Solomon died after 40 years on the throne, and his son Rehoboam took the crown. The northern tribes came to meet the new king at Shechem with a single request: lighten the load your father put on us, and we will serve you. Rehoboam told them to come back in 3 days. For 3 days, the whole north waited outside a town that was not even his capital, while the new king decided who to listen to. He asked his father's old advisors first. They told him to give the people what they were asking for, and he would keep them for the rest of his life. Then he asked the men he had grown up with. They told him to make the load heavier. He went with his friends. He told the northern tribes that his father had disciplined them with whips, and that he would use scorpions. 10 tribes walked out of Shechem. Jeroboam came back from Egypt, and they made him king. The kingdom Solomon had inherited whole was 2 separate countries before he had been dead a year. It never went back together. 2 capitals, 2 armies, and centuries of intermittent war between people who had been one country. The wisest man in the ancient world had a blind spot shaped exactly like his own life, and his son inherited it precisely, right down to ignoring the older advisors and listening to the ones who said what he wanted to hear. For 3,000 years, that was just a story about one flawed king. In 2014, two psychologists tested whether it was a story about everyone. Grossmann and Ethan Kross ran 3 experiments across 693 people. The setup was simple and slightly cruel. They asked participants to imagine that their partner had slept with someone else. Not as an abstraction. Sit in it. Picture the room, the conversation, what you would say, what you would do the next morning. A second group got the identical scenario with one detail changed. It was their best friend's partner who had cheated. Same betrayal, same details, different owner. Then everyone was asked to reason out loud about what should happen next. Everything they said was recorded and scored by trained raters who did not know which group anyone was in. What the researchers were scoring was not intelligence, and it was not the quality of the advice. They were scoring 4 specific habits: whether you admit the limits of what you actually know, whether you can hold someone else's point of view in your head at the same time as your own, whether you expect the situation to change instead of treating it as permanent, whether you go looking for a compromise instead of a win. Those 4 things are what wisdom turns out to be. Once you have to measure it. The people reasoning about their friend's betrayal did all 4. The people reasoning about their own did not. Same pool of people, same scenario, matched down to the wording. The only thing that changed was whose life it was. The next experiment tested whether you grow out of it. They ran it again with adults between 60 and 80, people carrying 4 extra decades of marriages, divorces, funerals, and repairs. The gap was the same size. The oldest people in the study were as trapped inside their own lives as the youngest. 40 more years of experience bought no protection at all, not in your own life, which leaves you somewhere uncomfortable. The wisdom is not missing. You demonstrated it 3 weeks ago at 11 at night on the phone, without effort. It just refuses to point in one particular direction. The second and third experiments were built to find the switch. The researchers changed one thing. They asked people to think about their own problem in the third person. Not why am I so angry, but your own name. And why is she so angry? Not what should I do, but what should he do? That is the entire intervention. Pronouns. It sounds like a party trick. It held up across 2 separate experiments. The gap closed. People reasoning about their own betrayal in the third person scored as wisely as the people reasoning about a stranger's. Same problem, same person, same afternoon, one grammatical change. It works for the same reason the paradox exists. When the problem belongs to you, you are inside it. You are not analyzing the situation. You are defending a position in it. Your fear is in the room. So is your pride, and the version of events where you come out of this looking reasonable. When the problem belongs to your friend, none of that is in the room with you. You get the map instead of the streets. The third person puts you back above it. It moves you out of the chair and across the table. Nothing about the problem changes. The only thing that moves is where you are standing when you look at it. Solomon never got that. He had an entire hall built for judging other people. 2 strangers walk in, he sits above them on a raised stone step, and the answer is obvious within minutes. Nobody ever built him a hall for his own household. Nobody sat above that one. 3,000 years later, nobody has built you one either. There is something you have been circling for weeks. You thought of it somewhere in the last few minutes. Say it out loud in the third person tonight. Use your own name. It will feel ridiculous. Do it anyway. Nobody has to hear it. What comes back will be the same thing you would have told anyone else, instantly, at 11 at night, on the phone. You had it the whole time. It was only ever pointing the wrong way.